My transition from study to the workplace was not smooth at all. I, um, I didn't know whether I wanted to work and what I wanted to do, and I didn't know whether I wanted to finish my studies, because at that time it was hard for me to finish my studies. So what I've realized from that transition, because I did a lot of back and forth. I took a break from studies and went into full-time work and full-time study. And then I went back again and did, I guess you could say, three-quarter time work and full-time study to finish my degree. But what it's made me realize is that going from study to a full-time job is not always a linear transition. It can go back and forth, it can go up and down. It's what works for you. I think you need to be like a sponge. You need to be able to just absorb everything, absorb the culture of an organization. I think that's one of the most important things. Because ultimately you may be good at your job, but if you're not a fit in the culture of an organization, you probably won't last there very long. I also think you need to keep your communication channels open. And if you don't know something, just ask. A lot of the positions that I've been in, I knew nothing about when I first went into, and my degree was just a step in the door to get there. So asking and going out and just immersing myself in the organization was the best way to learn.
So the transition from university to the workplace was challenging for me because I really didn't use my content from my degree. I studied law and arts, and I went into technology. So it wasn't immediately apparent what skills I could transfer across. In hindsight, I think a lot of the analytical communication skills that I learnt were immediately useful. I just didn't have an awareness of that at the time. And it took me a long time actually to retrospectively appreciate that those skills were useful. But in the first case, I felt like my degree had zero applicability to the work that I was doing. So that was quite challenging.
I think my transition between university and work life wasn't so difficult, and that's mainly because I was so used to interning, and the internship I was at that eventually turned into my graduate role, I was already working at 3 days a week for about 6 months before I actually graduated. And if anything, it felt like I just needed to get my studies out of the way so I could actually just work full time and make use of those practical skills. Then I felt like the theoretical learning I was getting at university was obviously still useful, but when I was in the workplace and knowing what I needed to do, and I didn't really want to worry about the theoretical stuff, I just wanted to stick to the practical. So I think the main challenge was just balancing coursework with the start of work life. And then once in work life fully, I think just adapting to not having such a routine necessarily, except for the routine of getting up, going to work, leaving at 5 o'clock or whenever you leave, and getting used to that, and having to sort of use more initiative, I guess, and not be so, here's your assignment, do it, get it done, here's your grade.
I think transition from university to the workplace is different depending on the experiences that you've had when you were at university. If you have only gone to university and sat in class the entire time, then you perhaps will have a more difficult or a more challenging time adjusting to a work environment, because university is generally more flexible. You don't necessarily have to rock up, and then you can also go to the library to study when you want, at the time that you want to. Moving into a workplace, and so I started working, so I finished high school on the Friday, and the next Monday I had a job lined up, and so I started working from the time that I left high school. So I'd been working all the way through university. So I already knew that I needed to rock up at 8:30 to open the shop at 9, and then so forth. But I think that it's when you have your first grad job and then you start talking about what real expectations are from a business, then that can still provide some sort of culture shock, moving from a more relaxed environment to something that is a little bit more, a little bit more framed. I think that transition comes in different ways and different levels, and it's all about how you're able to how you are, and that's where employability or where your self-development comes in, and how self-aware you are, so that you're able to have that type of conversation in a way that is constructive for the other person. So you could come in there and completely bawling your eyes out and can make a complete fuss of the entire thing, which they might be really uncomfortable for the other person, and they're not actually predisposed to keeping you employed. Whereas you come in being quite calm, you say, this is, the way that I would do it would be come in feeling quite calm, this is the reasons, this is what I've done, this is what I found, what we've agreed is just not achievable, we need to reset. Does that sound okay? So I think that different people work differently.